Welcome back to the Marketing MadMen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here with Hugh Massie, the chairman and founder of DNA Behavior International. And before the break, we were kind of culminating to this point of you have to know yourself to be able to know you need help and know where you need it. And I think one of the hardest things, I train 12 salespeople. We have a big company. We're always seen and being everywhere. But a lot of people don't understand how important self-awareness is and being honest with yourself is. Why do you think that is? And what advice do you give to people before they even start all this to make themselves more self-aware?
Well, first thing is, Nick, I totally agree with you. Self-awareness is absolutely everything. And it's not only being self-aware of your strengths, but it's also understanding the struggles that you might have, which are the flip side of a strength or a strength overplayed. So understanding your impact on other people. I think that it's very easy for a salesperson who's very extroverted, outgoing, to step into a room and charm a client, but may not realize that he or she is talking too much.
Right, nuance.
Not on the right point, just heard what they want to hear, not knowing how to properly ask a different person, in front of them the questions that they need to be asked and making it about them. So
sure. Finding a problem that you need to be solved. That's a salesperson's job. That's their only job, is to find a problem that you know you can solve.
And I think, related to all of this is how we manage our own energy. And it's just actually feeling what's going on in the room.
Yeah.
You're feeling, because you can feel all this in your body. That's the other side of this. It's not just in your brain, it's not just in your brain. It's in the body. It's actually in your heart. And can you feel that flow going on?
That's what I'll call situational awareness, which is the second most important, I think, to be a salesperson. You have to be situationally aware of what's going on around you at all times. You have to know that situation. That's a great point.
But I think that what stops people is that a lot of people are scared of themselves. They're scared to know.
Yeah.
But in a way, the more that you can confront that and address who you are and where all that's come from, then you can put yourself onto the right track and grow from that. But it's hard to do that if you don't know, if you're scared of yourself.
Yeah. I would say that the other part that I think is just wildly important is the concept of how you handle failure, because the easiest way to understand what your weaknesses are is to see the times in which you failed, especially when you were confident you were going to succeed but you failed. I think too many people, for whatever reason, we have made it too conservative now that people are afraid to make those mistakes. Because in my life, when I've gotten a big deal done, it was because there were two deals beforehand that one part I screwed up and I wove that into how I was doing it, and you learn from failure. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't fail miserably. Don't go take out $1 million, take a crap company, but start with somewhere where you can scale. And if you fail, learn from the failure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the biggest, and we've measured it actually in our system, is the number one requirement or behavioral trait for an entrepreneur is resilience. So how do you step back from the stumbles or the disappointments or a business partner breakup or a client not coming in when you expect it to come in, or something going on at home? There are so many things that can go on in any one day. You've got to be able to handle all of that and have the mental resolve to do it. And I think that also comes back to having the right meaning and purpose in what you're doing. If you haven't got that part right, everything's going to fall apart. But resilience is the number one thing, and you've got to be able to get back up and inspire your team when these things go wrong. Because if you're showing fear when something happens, it's going to go through the team.
It funnels its way down. So this has been spoken about at great length. You talk about Angie Duckworth and her grit TED Talk. These are things that have circulated the world many times. You talk about most, from Warren Buffett to, you got Sergey Brin, all these guys who started these companies. They don't come through the classic American picket fence story. They've all overcome. Most of them dropped out of school. Somebody told them they couldn't do it, and they did it. So with all of that, why do you think this is still so hard for us to understand? With so much information out there, why do you think it is so hard for people to understand how important that resilience is? I've got a conspiracy theory that I'll throw out there, but why do you think? What do you think it is?
I think that resilience is about confronting yourself, and is being prepared to accept failure. But I think the way I've said it to people and to myself is, I didn't fail. I just learned something that's moved me to the next direction. And if I have that mindset, I think it's along the lines that you were talking about before, that this was part of the tapestry of what was supposed to happen, so that I would get to the right place
to
climb the mountain. And I know, somebody told me today not to talk about mountain climbing stories, but I think it is all part of that.
I agree.
And it's again though, to the point you're making before, is always be viable, because if you've got the right purpose, the right relationships at some point are going to show up, and that's what's going to accelerate your life. It all happens through building the right relationships at the end of the day. But if you're not viable and you're not confident, then none of that's going to happen.
I agree. And I always say, someone's like, oh, that person got lucky. I go, no, that person put themselves in a position to get lucky. So, you don't just get lucky. Some people who put themselves in position to have luck better manifest themselves because they're putting themselves out there more. It's hard to get lucky if you never take any risks.
So I think that the other part of this in the resilience conversation is trusting yourself. So you've got to have ultimate belief in yourself and coming with that confidence. Confidence breeds confidence. And you've got to have confidence in spades, and otherwise, if you don't, you're going to get crushed.
Yeah, and you can't be worried about what other people think, because people are scared by confident people. They scream narcissist. They don't care. They're terrified of confident people.
Now, overconfidence is another matter.
And that's
got to be confidence in check. Can't be so much that you're narcissistic or you're cruel to people.
And you're not tricking anybody. In this day and age, you're dealing with these are businessmen that have their oats sown. You're not going to trick them between the two. There's a difference between them. So I think that's great. So to get back on track, because we've already wandered off. So let's start with this one. So you've been in a successful business. You've been coaching people. You've found out ways to incorporate psychology and financial. And we're going to talk about all that. What do you think has been the key factor in your success?
Yeah, for me, it was having clarity of my purpose and never wavering off that. Once I understood the role of human behavior in my life and how to apply it, I've never wavered. And it's all been about then being prepared to innovate as events have happened. So technology has become my friend. I always had a goal. We were always technologically good, but being consistently prepared to change the business model, to take it head on, to risk the business model, to leapfrog ahead, I think is the big part. And I've got a very strong competitive drive. I'm not about beating somebody else, but I'm about doing the best that I can do with the talents that Hugh Massie has.
Yeah.
And I'm relentless about that.
Yeah, I think that if you're not competitive with yourself, then you become complacent. And when you become complacent, you open yourself up for disappointment, because you're not striving to set goals to, let's see if I can do this, right? There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I want to be a podcaster, and making a plan to do it. What's wrong with saying you're going to be a podcaster, doing one episode and being done with it because you have no future vision.
But I also, and you're a marketer, I follow a principle called Play Bigger. There's a book called Play Bigger by a guy called Al Ramadan. And it's really about how do you build a category king business? How do you be the king of your category? And I also read another book many years ago called Hidden Champions, which was really about private companies that had got themselves to $100 million of turnover by being the king of a market channel.
Yeah.
So for me, is keeping us DNA behavior differentiated on the money insights. There's 3,000 systems out there on behavioral insights, hiring, whatnot.
Yeah.
For us, it was about the money insights.
And if it's such a contentious point for so many people, why is more focus not on it?
Again, because people are scared to talk about it.
Okay, I love it. So now let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about. So we talked about. You said that you started bringing in the psychology of money, and you're starting to compare these things, and you can actually track how behaviors make certain leadership qualities.
Yeah.
Let's elaborate on that a little bit. So, let's say that I'm a $20 million business. I come to you, say I want to get to 150 million. I want to scale. Okay, so talk about how financial behavior and how I do that would affect, and how you would cater a program based on that information that I gave you.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think there's a couple of dimensions.
Please.
Firstly, it all starts with the CEO. So he or she have got to be cut from the right cloth with the right financial behaviors, and in particular, there are three of them. They've got to have the right competitive goal drive.
Okay.
To basically sell. But there's got to be a really strong innovation focus, so a capability to design new products, because I think, as we've alluded to today, the world's changing fast.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to adapt and change your products, change your marketing on a dime, and do it creatively, you're going to have nothing to sell. And you've got to be able to take risk on that. So who have you got in your business that can help you do that. And it might be a younger pup down in the ranks, but you've got to find that person and give them a role, mentor them. And then you've got to be able to do this cost effectively. You can't, as you alluded to earlier, Nick, you can't just be pissing money away, right, in the process. You've got to do it cost effectively. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down, is they throw, once they decide they're going to go and do something, they throw a big budget at it.
Yeah.
And it's wasted, and then they waste a whole lot of money on overhead.
Yeah, I think they go one of two ways. They either put too much money into it or not enough money into it, and I think you fail at both of those. You got to be very strategic and set in your plan.
Yeah, it's not putting some money to it.
Yeah,
but it's being a bit more considered about it, and I think that's the sort of the financial prudence that comes with all of this. So if you can do that, and then incentivize your team all the way through, so that your innovation teams are responsible for the cost structure, the products that come out. They get rewarded for that. Even right down to the lowest level people are all getting rewarded if the company is profitable every quarter and bringing that culture in. So then it's about investing in the culture. And I think that we're a lot of people are scared to invest in the relationship side of the business.
Yeah.
That's got to be brought along as well. You've got to spend money on that. But the thing is that our research has shown that if you invest in these really 6 competencies, your profits go up. Because we did the research study of the S&P 500 companies.
Sure.
We did their senior leaders, and we could see a direct connection between these behaviours and company profitability. So the leaders in their sectors are more profitable if their leadership team has these behaviours. And I think it makes sense that the CEO, particularly, has an authority bias that pushes itself all the way through a company. He or she selects the people, says what he wants or she wants from the generals that are around him or her, and that goes all the way through every team.
Do you have, and I'm going to give a example, but do you have data as to how much, when a change happens at those ranks, how long it takes to affect the company? So the one that comes to mind immediately is Boeing. Okay, Boeing was on the top of the world, and with 8 to 10 very poor decisions and all those things you talked about, investing in your people, bottom up, top down, all those things, it is now almost a mockery of itself. So what does the data point to? How long does this change to change? How much influence does one bad person have in all of this? Do you have any of those numbers?
Yeah, so the one bad person comes in at the top, and Boeing, is one of the case studies that I often talk about.
Okay.
And you probably know there's a Netflix video about it.
Okay.
5 to 8 years is how long it takes to seep through completely. You'll see some changes after 2. But it takes 5 to 8 years, and I think if you track the Boeing, that's what it was. I worked at Arthur Andersen.
Yeah.
On my exit interview, I said exactly the same thing. I said to my boss, the managing partner of the firm, if you don't make these 3 changes, 5 to 6 years' time, this firm won't be here. That was in 1996. In 2001, it was not there.
5 to 8 years. And that can go the other way. So another great example is GE, who was left for dead and now has rebounded back, trimmed the fat, got rid of their bad businesses, got good leadership top down, and they're now one of the better performing stocks that there is.
And everybody looks at Jack Welch as this saint of a leader.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot of messes he left behind. Yeah. Right? And which the next guy...
Because he wrote a book a lot of people read that they made him some guru, and I've read into it, and especially there were certain branches of the business that he neglected. No, they were lucky enough to spin those off when they did, and they caught the wave at the right time, but I agree with you.
Accounting, there's a whole lot of stuff there that you find out later. I've talked to a client of mine a number of years ago, asked me, should I invest in this insurance company? And I said no, because the year before, it had changed the whole insurance underwriting model from short-term to long-tail. That was a short-term move to jack up profits.
Right, which will always hurt you in the long run.
Hurts, and 5 years later, massive losses, and people don't see it coming. But a strategic leadership change will take about between 5 and 8 years to come through.
Yeah, and I think you have instances where you try to cut those off. Disney's a great example now. You had Chopak come in, and then Bob Iger came and go, this is going the wrong way. They made some cuts, and I think that 5-year frame is about right. But the reason I'm curious, I love the psychology of all this stuff.
Yeah.
More importantly, I love the sociology, because it's also how these people are interacting with the entire organization. And I've seen really good ones. I've seen really bad ones. I've seen institutions, for example, banking is a great example. They're just making money out of thin air. Their ranks, their management is, some people don't even know what's going on. You're talking senior level people that can't even answer simple questions about the business, because for the longest time, money was just creating money. But all of a sudden now the belt tightens a little bit, and the cracks start showing in a lot of these sectors.
And we're going to see all the 2008 problems come out again in the lending books, and the, you know, how they're all packaged up into whatever deal
instruments,
instruments and whatever. All they are is highly leveraged instruments, and at the end of the day, they're going to unravel again.
Yeah,
and it might be a little bit different because some regulations are different, but the same thing will happen again. And you've got to say that that's management 5 to 8 years before. Let that happen.
Yeah, I think that I'm not going to bash capitalism, because at its core, I'm a libertarian and a capitalist, and I believe that the best way to get free markets and get people out of poverty is to introduce capitalism and let the free market kind of take care of itself.
I agree with that.
But I do believe we are nearing the end of an economic and business cycle, and I believe that every 250 years, between the Dutch and then the English, that we have left when they were the reserve currencies, and we are in a very contentious spot as a country, where the money, there's no money anymore. We're just fighting over the same pools of money. So that being said, I don't want to be a doomsdayist, but what advice do you give to people who are not realistically looking at their finances? When do they come talk to you about, hey, we need to take a psychological evaluation, because the way you're doing business now will not work? It's easy when money's free, but at 6% interest rates, you see these companies fail right and left. It's amazing, the mortgage industry, right? They were selling mortgages with their eyes closed. You know what they did? They cashed those checks. They didn't put that money away to reserve for bad time in advertising. What is your advice there? It's human nature, I get it, but what is your advice there?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think one is going back to self-awareness, working on your talents. Find something that's meaningful for you to do, that you can do really well. And regardless of what happens economically, you better do it. Even if we go to a world where we've got to exchange money and work using some sort of cryptocurrency, it won't be Bitcoin. It's very possible the US dollar will have to be written off at some point, right? There's no economic lever left. So I think that's one part. I think the other thing is I'm still a believer in saving money and getting your debt down at a personal level, so you have flexibility. Because whatever happens in the future, Nick, I think both you and I are headed to the same place mentally on this.
Yeah.
If you have some financial flexibility, you're going to be able to take advantage of the massive opportunity that's out there. And I reckon we've all got 4 to 6 years to get that done.
I think that as I age, one of the things that I realize is that human nature is unpredictable, but some of it is so predictable. We make the same mistakes over and over, and we get fat and greedy, and we're so happy, and we see a 401k account and a house value, and we see all these things, but we're riding debt. I mean, we're taking car loans out, 10-year car loans on a $60,000 car. That's going to cost you $120,000 when it's done, but you have to keep up with your neighbor who bought the new car. I'm not saying a $100,000 car. A Ford freaking Explorer costs $50,000 now. So I think, now that being said, if you look, you also see the promotions start coming out. And if you're a thrifty person, you could start seeing deals pop their heads. They might not be advertised to everybody, but if you know where to look, now all of a sudden deals are starting to come back. So I think the underlying things are there if you look towards them. But I still think we just form bad habits. I think capitalism allows us to form bad habits, and then those habits manifest themselves until someone has to bail it out, and we just do the same problem again.
And we've gone through at least a generation, if not 40 years of unprecedented growth, where through that growth people have got away with it. You know, there are a lot of kids out there that haven't lived with having to really work or be with nothing, and that's a whole mindset. And as you say, I think we're coming up to the end of a cycle.
Yeah.
So
it's not just us. That's like the smartest minds in the world have said we're nearing the end of the cycle, the economic and the business cycle, which is scary. So that being said, I don't want to get into too much detail of the huge disparity between the rich and the poor, but one of the things you've dedicated your life to is mentoring in boys without fathers. So
absolutely,
talk a little bit about that, because that is another thing. Whenever capitalism just let go rampant, the haves and the have-nots separate themselves. And I think that, you know, my life, if I didn't have my father, he was the CEO of a hospital, and he taught taught me to be regimented, and I rebelled. I just tried to do whatever I want. But as I look back, I learned so much of it from him, how to be political but not be a politician, because people hate politicians, but know how to pull the right levers. Without a father, I don't know what would I have done. So there's a lot of kids out there without it. Talk about your time with Boys Without Fathers.
Yes, so Boys Without Fathers is a very deep passion, and it goes to the core of me. My father died when I was 1. My mother was still pregnant with my brother.
Wow.
And as I've gone through in my life journey, I've learned that, and I was doing podcasts like I'm doing with you, with 6 of our clients, 6 in a row. These men did not have a father, and their father had left the home either through death or divorce when they were under 3 years old. And we all had similar repercussions came from that, whether it was a literacy issue in growing up, social issues, being obese, and also being aggressive. And that's where a lot of crime comes from in America, is kids don't have a dad in the home early on, and then it's rampant in the African American community. And I know in Atlanta is a particularly bad place for it. And it gets into bad stuff. So for me, I always had a passion, because I didn't have a dad, to be a mentor to other kids and to show them the pathway. And the principle being is you don't have to be the victim; you can be the victor. And and again, it gets back to our resilience conversation. How do you help people go down that path? And that's really what the Boys Without Fathers. And you get to mentor people directly, so you not only see it. It's not like you're giving money to a charity that you see it. Maybe you see it on a line item 1,000 years. You're talking in direct influence on people. We're absolutely doing it directly. I've got collaborations with other people who are doing this work directly. Yeah, I love it. Look, we've covered a lot. We're going to go into the next segment. I'm going to talk to you a little about writing books. I think is another thing that people just want to write a book. They don't have purpose. They don't do it for the right reasons. I'm going to talk a little bit about writing a book, and then I want to talk about some things that excite you about the future. But in the last minute and a half, what kind of business and what kind of business person would benefit the most from meeting with you and going through your systems? I think that any person that wants to get on a growth track, and if they're just thinking about, well, how do I optimize my business? Yeah, I want to help them take it exponential. I want them to think about changing it. 80% of what they've got in their business and get on a 10x path, and it's going to happen partly through people looking at technology differently and looking at how they measure themselves differently. Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things that I've picked up of the business I've dealt with, I think a lot of people say they want to grow their business, but some don't. Some are happy making $10 million and handing the business to their kid and growing 2%. It's completely fine. And that's what I tell people. It's something about marketing. Look, if you're looking to just stay at your business, grow quick ROI, do some digital advertising. But if you're looking to make a brand and pass this business to your kids and scale up, people have to know who you are. They have to see you and hear you, and you have to be tangible. And if someone just wants to make a quick buck, I will never tell them to do radio advertising. You don't need to do it. Go on the internet. Go fight over the same leads that everybody else is. Price your sensitivity. Go in a lower price and live life that way. Some people live happy lives. Plumbers, electricians. We don't have enough of them. If you want to be a plumber, go out on your own. You can make $500,000 a year easily and live the happiest life you can live. But I just think, again, it's that self-awareness. So when we get back to the break, we're going to pick that up. You've been listening to the Marketing MadMen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back.